Jen from Fabulous Paper Emporium. I had a request a couple of weeks ago that I perhaps put together a card making 101. And so today is the first of a series of videos that I'll be putting together that basically goes through some very basic techniques, some of the tools, and, you know, just some things that I've learned over the years in my card making travels, some of the challenges and things that, you know, I've you know, not endured. I don't want to make it sound like it's been, you know, horrible, but, you know, things that you learn along the way, mistakes that you've made, what not to do, what to do, that kind of thing. So today is really kind of like stripping everything back and just being very basic. Today we're going to go through some of the very basic tools of the trade, so to speak, and then we'll also be going through card sizes, specifically A2 card sizes today. And this way, by the end of the video, we'll put together a few different cards using some of the paper that I have, and just showing you how simple it can be to start out. There is a lot of information out there. I know there's a ton of YouTube videos doing all kinds of fancy cards, but if you want to start at the very beginning and kind of work your way up, then this would probably be the video series for you. So we're going to start off with our tools. So basic tools, I'm going to move my scissors aside. Scissors are definitely a very basic tool. I have a long pair of scissors and a tiny pair, and that's just for this. I kind of use for some of the finer details when I'm fussy cutting, and we'll get into the terminologies and everything through the course of the series. But it's good to have a good pair of paper scissors. So when I emphasize paper, I mean, you're not going to use these for anything else. If they're fabric scissors, I mean, the type and the style is, I don't think really matters. But you definitely want to have a pair of scissors that you use only for your paper crafts. So these scissors never leave here. They don't touch fabric because that's just going to dull the blade. And there are fabric specific scissors out there. So those are my two go-to pairs of scissors. I have other scissors when I'm cutting or anything that has adhesive on it. I, again, don't use these because they will gum up over time. So I have a pair of, like, you know, dollar store scissors for that. And that way, once they've gummed up, even though you try to kind of, you know, use some rubbing alcohol or whatever to clean it, sometimes it doesn't always work. So once they're done, they've outlived their usefulness, you throw them away. So scissors, definitely a good thing to have on hand. We also have rulers. I have two rulers that are kind of my go-to. You know, obviously this one I love because it's super long. It's 18 inches long, has inches, metric and imperial. It also has a magnet on that side, on the reverse side, which sometimes I find very handy. Plus it's metal, so it, you know, bends and stuff like that. So there's that one. There's also this Tim Holtz ruler, and it's got a lovely grid pattern on it, which does come in handy later on. So if you are investing in a ruler, then I would suggest this one. But for the time being, you really, if you've got a ruler at home and it's just a simple, I also have my Cricut ruler, which is tiny. This is in my stash, so I grab for this every once in a while too. So a 7-inch little ruler, if that's what you have, by all means. There's no point in, you don't have to go out and invest hundreds of dollars to get started in card making. That is one of my tips for today. So those are the rulers. The next thing that we have, and you probably see a lot of people using them, are paper trimmers. Paper trimmers and scoreboards are like a go-to for a lot of paper crafters. And paper trimmers come in a variety of sizes. So I've just got a few here. So these are 2 that I have. There's this one which has a smaller board to it, but it does have an arm that swings out. So you do have 12 inches of space from the top, from the area that you cut to here, to the end of the arm. Plus you also have some space on the opposite side, which comes in handy when you're doing cuts of like, you know, a 1/2 inch, that kind of thing. If you have the paper on this side, you can always give it extra stability. The arm that flips up and down also has a nifty little area where you push down, and that really does secure your paper in place. So if you are cutting a 5-inch piece, then you would line up your end of your paper here, push your arm down, and then you have a blade that goes along to cut. And this is the blade. I'm just going to take it out of the housing for a second. So this is the blade that goes with this paper trimmer. Not all blades are the same. Not all blades kind of mix and match. So just something that you should know. So generally speaking, when you're purchasing a paper trimmer, you will also get one of these guys, the black one. And this just has a rounded edge or blade. It's not really a blade. It's got a rounded piece of metal. And this is your scoring mechanism doodad. I don't know what the exact term for it is. But as I slide this out, there's actually a little area where it just pops out, so you don't have to fuss around with it. You can exchange them. This pops in, and this would do your scoring. So basically this becomes a multi-tool, which when you're beginning is beautiful, because you don't have to worry about, you know, buying 2 things. You know, you don't have to buy a scoreboard and a paper trimmer. If you had to choose one, paper trimmer is the way to go, because then you get your scoring tools with the blade, with the whole kit. You're good to go. The other paper trimmer that I have is this one, also by Fiskars, and this one is very dusty. I'm seeing I don't use it a whole lot, not anymore anyways. I'm going to move some of this stuff out of the way. So the one thing you'll notice first is it's got a larger platform, so it will just hold your paper a little bit flatter. It doesn't change how it gets cut. We also have an arm here. Although this bar does kind of hide a little bit of the cutting surface, it really, again, doesn't really impede. If you have your paper lined up and you're wanting to do like a 1/2 inch and you have it lined up here, it really, that part of it doesn't really impact it at all. This also has an arm that flips out, and this one goes now to 15 and a bit inches on the left hand side, and it goes again to 1 1/4 on the right hand side, which is roughly what the other one did as well. This too has a cutting blade. Let me just pop it out of the housing. I remember this one being a little bit tougher. So as you can see, the 2 blades are different. So that's what I meant by they're not interchangeable. So the end, this is the blade in it. Doesn't look very big or impressive, but it has cut me more times than I care to remember. So anyways, just be very careful when you're handling these. But this, like the other one, also comes with a scoring bit. So the scoring bit can just be replaced, and then you can use that as your scoreboard. So again, very simple and very useful tool. So I'm going to set those to the side. These are what we call scoreboards. So like I said before, if you're buying a paper trimmer, buy a paper trimmer that also comes with the scoring bit, and you don't have to worry about getting these right away. These come in handy. I will admit I use these quite often, but I've acquired this the tools over time. So again, not required. So we have a little score buddy. And if you'll see at the top, we have got all of our measurements. This one is in inches. We do have some measurements down the side here. So what you would do is you would lay your piece of paper. I'm gonna grab a piece of cardstock from my scraps. And this is your scoring tool. So basically, if I wanted to score at 2 inches, I go to the 2-inch mark here, and it's got little grooves, so I can just follow a line. You put a little bit of pressure, it goes a long way, especially with paper. If you need to go over it multiple times, that is totally different. You don't want to go like and put as much force on there as possible. A, you'll probably break this tool because they're very bendy, but B, you'll probably end up ripping your paper. We'll get into scoring a little bit later. However, you know, if you have a paper trimmer and are looking to invest, then the scoreboards are pretty handy to have, but again, not essential. So I'm going to set these aside now. And we're going to go into bone folders. So I have basically one bone folder. This is the tool that I use probably the most. The bone folder comes in super handy when you are burnishing the paper that you're using. So this is the piece that I just finished scoring. Okay. So when I mean by burnishing is when we go to fold it, we can push down with our fingers, but if you want a super crisp line, you use your bone folder to get that really folded down nicely. Then you have a super crisp line and fold. So the paper now has been trained. This is how it's going to be folded, and that's perfect. So there is the reason for having a bone folder. A bone folder. Yes, that's what I called it. The next thing that I wanted to discuss, of course, pencils are an excellent tool to have as well in case you need to mark anything. Those come in super handy. The next big thing to talk about is adhesives. There are many, many types of adhesives out there. There's the two kind of main categories is you have wet adhesives and you have dry adhesives. So let me bring in some of these tools. Okay. So here I've got 2 bottles. This is the wet adhesive that I personally like and I use all the time. Comes in different size bottles. I believe this comes in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce. This is the 8 ounce, and there's a larger one. And if you notice, they have these precision tips on them with a pin. Now, not any pin. These are like a stainless steel pin. It keeps the nozzle free and clear of any kind of glue, so you don't have to worry about you know, having to unstick your nozzle, because that would be pretty impossible, I feel like, with these. And it also allows you to get into the tiny nooks and crannies. I generally don't swap out my tips, so I just use the same tips on my glue, whether I'm gluing a fine point or not, but you can if you want to. So that is, excuse me, that is the liquid glue. So this is permanent, water-based, non-toxic. It dries clear as well. So if you get any glue on paper where it wasn't intended, generally speaking, not the end of the world. It happens to everybody when they're making cards. You just kind of brush it off with your finger or a little bit of paper towel and you should be good to go. The other things that we have here, and these are like dry adhesives, we have some glue dots, and these is a brand new box, so I don't even have it open. Pull that tab. Having to kind of figure out which tabs to pull here. I should have had that ready, but give me 1 second and I will show you what the glue dots are. They're exactly what you think they are. Let's see where we are with the glue dots. Where are they? Oh, there we go. Okay. So glue dots are, sorry, this is getting all hung up here. So the glue dots are like exactly what you think they are. So they are they're dots that are adhesive on both sides. So this has a protective top layer, so I'm not getting it all over the place. But as soon as I take that off, and I can peel this top layer, I'm just gonna tear that so you can see it better. So if I take this top layer off, now we've got the adhesive circle, and to apply it to your paper, you would use this, you know, if you just had a little embellishment that you wanted to add. The glue dots come in a variety of sizes. This one is pretty large. If you see that here, hopefully that shows up. Let me just see. Yeah, you can see the discoloration here. Okay, so they're clear, but you do see them, especially that I've stuck my my finger in it. So that is a glue dot. Like I said, they come in super small. This is the large size. They are pretty handy to have. I gotta say, I don't use them quite as often. Liquid glue and double-sided tape are usually my go-tos for just simple card making. But the foam adhesives are also pretty good. Let me just show you really quickly. So this is double-sided tape, comes in a roll. And again, it has the protective backing because it is sticky on both sides. So if I wanted to, again, do maybe some layers, that kind of thing, and you want to secure it very, very well, then double-sided tape is, it's usually used, I use it the most in album and folio making, not so much in card making, but you definitely can, because this, over the long run, if you're making a lot of cards, will get more expensive. The liquid glue is still your best option as far as that goes. So I'm going to set those aside. And then, as I was saying, the 3D foam circles, squares, strips, what have you, are also a really good tool to add dimension to your project. So this doesn't have a little handy dandy little flap at the bottom, so I have to cut it open. Give me 1 second. I know I have one open somewhere. It just, let me just get this. Easy peasy. So these are little foam. If you see from the side, again, they're sticky on both sides. So it's got a backing adhesive and it's got a front adhesive. So to use these, you just kind of push a little bit and you have this little foam circle. So we'll use these a little bit later on today, but I'll show you a quick little tip trick if you're wanting something to just add, like I said, a little bit of dimension. Whether it's between layers, if you want your sentiment to kind of stand out a little bit, then this is a perfect tip, the perfect item for that. Again, fairly simple, not overly expensive. And when you're done with all the circles, even the foam around it is also double-sided and tacky on both sides. So this entire sheet is completely usable, 100%. So that is something that you need to bear in mind, that you don't throw it away once all the circles are gone. Everything in there is usable and can be, like, you get really thin strips, if you can see right along here, between the circle and the end of this and the end. It's perfect for really, really thin areas. And this is just a different shape. So these are strips and they're black. And the reason why they make black is because on some projects, especially when you're using darker cardstock, if you look at it from the side, you can see the white and it tends to kind of really stand out. But honestly, in the entire time that I've been doing crafting, I rarely buy the black. So again, we're kind of trying to keep this very simple. The last adhesive are these tape runners, and they're good, but if you were, again, kind of doing, you know, you can purchase these. And I'm sorry if I sound a little bit undecided. I like these just fine, and they're good. Will they stand the test of time? So if you make a card and you give it to a family member in 20 years, I can't say it's all going to be together still. Depending on the paper that you're using, you may find that this requires, it's good for the short term. Let's just leave it at that. Plus, again, as good as the tape runners are, and then this, again, is just my opinion, when you are making lots of cards, this gets a bit expensive. Again, the liquid glue, I can't say enough about the liquid glue, is really, honestly and truly my go-to. We also have some washi tape. Washi tape is decorative on the outside. It sticks perfectly fine to paper. I'm trying to look for the beginning of this. I don't think I can find it. This one, it has like little tiny mushrooms on it. It's super cute. But you can use it as a quick way to embellish. Here, I think I found it. Embellish like the front of your card. So if you had some washi tape that goes with the designer paper that you're using, you can tear it really super easily as well. So if you're okay having kind of that bit of a rougher side to it, then absolutely totally fine. But it, like I said, it adheres perfectly well to paper. It does come off if you peel it slowly, kind of pull that backwards. It is removable. So I personally use washi tape a lot when I'm doing some projects and I just want to tack something down for the short term, like, and have it be removable. So yeah, so washi tape, decorative, it's perfectly fine. And then this is just another type of the foam tape. So the foam tape here is a little bit less, it's not as high, I guess. It's not as lofty as the foam dots that, or foam circles and strips that I was showing you. And this, again, like, I got a massive roll of it, and I've only put a small dent in it. It, again, is not necessarily a requirement. If you're going to buy anything, get the smaller packages, see how you like using it, and just kind of over time, you'll get a feel for how it's used and you know, how you want to have your products or projects be. So, excellent. There's a lot of other things that I could go into. Stamps is probably the other item that I want to talk about really quickly. So stamps and inks. We will discuss paper. I'm leaving paper to the end because I really want paper to, when you're beginning crafting, paper, if you buy like a design paper with pattern on it, that's really where, you know, you let your personality shine. You can kind of, there's papers out there for absolutely everything. Dog lovers, cat lovers, fish, you know, you name it, it's out there. So, letting your paper kind of shine will, even on the most basic of card, will still make a fantastic card. Okay, so let me just set some of this aside, and we're going to talk really quickly about stamps. I was like looking around madly to find where I put the stamped stuff. Okay, so with stamps, there are a few different kinds, and there are a few things to note. Okay, so first, as far as stamps go, you have the clear ones, and then you have the non-clear, I guess. It's a rubber stamp. Both of these stamps use these acrylic blocks. Okay, so super easy to find. I wouldn't necessarily worry about investing in a ton of these like, you know, animal or critter or whatever stamps. What you probably want to find first is some really good sentiment stamps. So a happy birthday, a congratulations, you know, something along those lines that is just really kind of simple, 1 or 2 words that will go on the outside of your card. And I'm trying to find one. I had it out. Oh, let's see. I don't know what happened to it. Really not sure. Okay. So, I mean, this is kind of something like what I'm talking about. It has happy birthday, congratulations, thank you, hello, and have a great day. So this small stamp set you can use for a multitude of cards for a multitude of occasions. And it doesn't have to be something big. Like I said, you can find these just about everywhere. So, and sometimes it comes with a few little embellishments. So this one has a butterfly, a little bit of a leaf, and a flower. So, excuse me. So these are pretty handy. They're really super easy to use. So what you do is you peel it off the back, the clear, it's not cellophane, acetate that you get, and you can put it on your acrylic block. And then if you can see right through this. So that's a huge thing when you're starting off, is being able to see exactly where you're stamping. And that way you don't have to worry about, you know, having to remake something because you stamped it in the wrong spot. So that is pretty handy to have. They're super easy to clean. You'll see some of mine are stained because of the different types of inks that are out there. Excuse me. And then the last stamp kind that we have is the wooden pre-mounted stamps. So this is kind of like, you know, when I was getting into stamping and card making, this was kind of like the go-to, and it's great, but all too many times, like, you have to basically ensure that the stamp part of it isn't always 100% true, like in terms of how it's been applied to the block. You can't see when you're stamping. And it's just, they're a little bit more challenging to use. So for the beginner, I definitely would go with like the photopolymer stamps, because they're super, super easy to use. Okay, sorry. I was going on a bit of a tangent. I also took out my Misti, but in the grand scheme of things, for a beginner, it's a little bit more of an expensive tool. I will show you what it does because it is pretty handy to have, but it is not essential. So I'm just going to use this paper that I've obviously used for a few different things to kind of stamp off, but I'm going to use this little thank you. And basically what the Misti does is you place your, I think I threw it out. So I'm going to grab another piece of cardstock from my scraps. I always keep a pile of, I have a box with scraps in it, because there will always be scraps, but you know, when we talk about the different size bases, then you'll see kind of, you know, that we try to use as much as possible, especially when you're beginning, to have as less waste as possible. And that's where the bases are going to come in and that kind of thing. So there's a magnet. So this does have a magnetic platform underneath the paper. I actually don't need this, so I'm going to set that aside. But there's foam. That's to raise your stamp up. But this is a magnetic surface, and it's a very strong magnetic surface. So I'm going to put this on like this. And let's say this gives you the ability to move this stamp wherever you wanted. So let's say I had just a small little circle, which I don't have right now, you would then fold this over. It collects your stamps. So this lid is acting like your acrylic block. I open it, I find some ink, I can ink that, and then I can fold it over, press down, and then I have my thank you. The beauty about this is having your paper stay in the same spot is that if you hadn't inked up your sentiment well enough, you can always go back, re-ink, and then you have a clearer image. So this allows you to stamp over and over and over again on the same thing. And it doesn't, since this is your card or your paper, cardstock, whatever you're using, is in the same spot, you can do that multiple times. So it really becomes a handy tool. But like I said, a little bit more on the costly end of things, and it is not required because I can get the same exact, stamp results with just my acrylic block. Okay, so again, super easy to use especially when it's clear. So along with stamps, if you are using stamps, and like I said, I do recommend them because they'll add to your card. They're pretty simple and they don't have to be very costly. The other side to that is stamp cleaner. And you do have, this is a very well loved cleaning. I do need a new one. I like embarrassed to show you it. But basically, if you have this, it is like a non-shedding, it's lint-free. Lint-free is extremely important in this case because you don't want lint to get all on your stamp because it will stick to that. And then any future stamps or when you go to use it again, it's really not going to work as well. So I have some I'm bringing in some stamp cleaner, so I apologize, but basically what I do is I put a couple of drops on there. You can actually make it yourself, and if I can find, I will ask. I know a follower shared with me the recipe to make your own stamp cleaner at home. I have not used it yet, but after I use it, I will post the recipe for that. So if you see, the other important thing to do with your stamps is to make sure that they're clean after the fact. Otherwise, you can get gunk all in it, and you just want your stamps to last a very long time. I've got stamps from probably about 20 years ago. So if you maintain them well, you're good to go. And you would just let that dry. Again, you don't want to have any lint on there, and you want to try and handle it as least amount as possible. Sorry, I've got a hair there. Okay, and then I'm going to put it right back on the acetate. So it's really this side that sticks to the acetate that you want to keep free and clear from any possible like over handling it, because the oils from your hand are going to transfer, and over time they'll become less sticky and they won't adhere to your block. There is a way to bring it back, but that requires kind of cleaning. And then I'm just going to give this a wipe with some paper towel. If I needed some cleaning solution on here, sometimes I get kind of messy with my stamping. But you want to keep this, again, as clear as possible to make sure that it's usable the next time you come to use it. Okay, inks. Inks are pretty polarizing as far as I can tell. For a beginner, my two options for you would be either the VersaFine It's a pigment ink. It's really, really excellent for fine details. So no matter what stamp you have, this will work so well. And it's black. It comes in I know that it comes, I think, in a couple of different colors, but black is kind of my go-to because, again, you can use it all the time for any sentiment, any occasion, doesn't matter. The other one that I have, and this is a strangely large ink pad, but again, my go-to, this is waterproof ink. And so if you do like coloring, whether it's with watercolors, alcohol inks, or pencil crayons, this will still work. And this is the archival ink that we're actually bringing into the store, which I'm pretty happy about. And like I said, this is really large ink pad. It works equally as well. The nice thing about the smaller ink pads though, is you can bring the ink to the stamp as opposed to using the stamp on the ink. And if you notice, I do that more than bringing, like if I had the stamp on here, I don't do that quite as much, bringing the stamp to the ink. I usually bring the ink to the stamp, and it's just a personal preference. It has nothing to do with, you know, one being better than the other. I just feel like it works better for me. So I get sometimes less inky, which I think is kind of weird, but it is what it is. So I just can't do that with this one because A, it's got a flip lid, so it becomes very kind of awkward to kind of handle. So that is that for the inks. So now we're going to talk about some paper, which I am so excited to talk about. And the reason why I'm excited to talk about paper now is because I'm going to go ahead and show you some tips and tricks for the card bases that you can make. So today we're really going to be focusing on 8.5 by 11 paper. So your standard letter size, at least here in North America. And I've got black, I've got some white, and I have this beautiful kind of turquoisey teal kind of color. So the reason why 8.5 by 11 works super well for all card makers, not just beginners. Like, I'm not saying that this is just a beginner thing, is you can get 2 cards out of 1 sheet, which is great, and you don't have any waste. So it makes it super affordable. It makes it so that you don't have a lot of extra scraps kind of laying around, which a lot of people love. So this is kind of your standard 65 pound, which is the other thing that you're going to see when you're buying cardstock, is you've got different weights. 65 pound is a lighter weight. It folds really beautifully. It works very well for layered cards. So this is kind of my go-to is 65 pound. You also have, there is a weight in between these, but it's just, I don't usually find it in 8.5 by 11. This cardstock is 110, and it's considerably more rigid, but again, totally fine and totally usable. So if you have either one, you just have to be mindful, because if you are going to be mailing a ton of cards, you just have to keep that in mind. If you do a lot of layering with the thicker card, it's going to weigh more, and you're probably going to be overweight in the sense of your card. But you're going to have to pay more to mail it. So just something to keep in mind. 65 pound works just as well, like I said. And that is it for well, that's a little bit for the cardstock. Okay, so I'm going to grab right now a piece of black cardstock. I am going to grab my small paper trimmer, and I'm going to show you a variety of ways on how to cut this and score it so you get 2 cards out of 1 base. So the A2 sized card, the finished card folded and everything, is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So 4 1/4 is exactly half of 8 1/2. So we can cut this right down the middle. And then 5.5 is exactly half of the 11, which is where we can fold it. So if we're going to take this, I'm going to lift my arm and I'm going to find the 4 1/4. So this one and most of the paper trimmers that I've seen go up in increments of 1/16. So the longer line here and here, those ones are the quarters. So there's 4 1/4, 4 1/2, 4, and then 4 3/4. I'm going to point with something else so that my big fat finger is not in the way. Okay, so I've got the 4-inch mark right here. This would be 4 1/16, 4 1/8, 4 2/16, etc., etc. So 4 1/4 is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to line this paper up with the 4 1/4 mark. So I just barely kind of go over the line. I got that all lined up. I take my paper trimmer and I cut it. So now I have 2 bases. Now how we're going to do what we do with this card base is we can fold this in, or sorry, not fold it, but we're going to score this in half. So to do that, I'm going to switch out my cutting tool and I'm going to put in my scoring tool. I'm going to line the end up with 5.5. Perfect. The only reason why, I just want to note, the only reason why I'm lifting this part up is I dropped this a couple of times and the arm doesn't always stay as straight as it should be. So you do have these 2 little raised areas here. So long as they're, you know, mine, I know how to use it. So mine is a little bit wonky right now. So then I would go over a couple of times with my scoring tool. And there you see, hopefully, that it's scored. So the scoring line that you have, because I've gone over and pressed downwards, on this side, it's a little bit of like a divot. If I flip it over, I feel with my finger that it's a little bit raised. So my way of folding would be to fold into, like, fold where you have the raised part is how I'm going to fold this. I'm going to have that on the inside. I'm going to put this away just so that you can see how it is that I fold the paper. So I've got, you still want to make sure that you've got your areas kind of all lined up. I'm going to push to the side and then I'm going to go over it with my bone folder to make sure that that crease is well burnished. And that's the term for that. So here I have a card base that either can be flipped upwards like this, or you can turn it and use it in the landscape, you know, position. And you could open it like this. Okay, so that's the first really simple card base. We also have a second one. So since I already have another one already cut, I'm going to score this again at 5.5. So my end of my paper is just at 5.5. And again, I go over with my scoring tool. And then I'm going to go ahead, fold this, making sure that I've got my corners nicely lined up. I'm going to press, and then I'm going to go over and burnish that side. So easy, just like that. We've got 2 card bases that we can use in either direction. Portrait going up and landscape going to the left. Okay, so I'm going to set those aside. I'm going to grab one more piece of cardstock. And I'm going to show you now how we can cut it in the other direction. And that way we have 2 completely different card bases. So this time we are going to, instead of having the 8.5 across the top, we're going to put the 11 across the top. We are going to change from scoring to cutting, which is the other thing I don't generally keep both on my paper trimmer at the same time because I've made the mistake, and you probably will too, where I've cut something where I meant to score it. So if I keep that in eye shot, hopefully I won't forget. So for this way, we're again going to cut the paper in half. So I'm lining it up to 5.5, which is right there. And then I'm going to cut. And again, we have 2 equal size pieces. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. So now I'm going to switch that out to my scoring. And now, so this is now 8.5. I'm going to score at 4.25 to put that in so that it's scored, and we're going to be folding it right in half. Okay, so again, on the top we have a divot, on the bottom we have the raised part, and the raised part is where I'm going to be folding. Okay, so fold it. I'm going to run it across with my fingers and then burnish that fold line with my bone folder. And like that, we have a card base now that opens like that, or in the landscape position, opens like that. So I'm going to do that again, repeat the exact same with the second piece. Again, going to 4.25. Okay, we have our card base. I'm going to put that off to the side. Line up our edges. Press down. And use the bone folder. So just like that, with 2 pieces of cardstock, I now have 4 bases that I could easily use for 4 different cards. It's just as simple as that. So I'm going to switch out my scoring blade, and I'm just going to set that off to the side. Whoops, as it kind of slides off. There we go. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to mention is for cards, you can buy all kinds of different designer paper, and what I mean by designer paper is paper that has pattern on it. Okay, so this one is 36 sheets. This one is single-sided. So if you'll notice, if I flip it over to the back, it's all white on one side, but it does have some beautiful pattern. Sorry I haven't opened this yet. Give me 2 seconds and I'll get that open so you can kind of see it a little bit better. So this one has some foil pieces. Oh, you know, I guess I should peel back the sticky stuff. It's like I can't. There we go. So this has some pieces that have foil on it. It's got some simple dots, or they look like snowflakes with a few little dots. So lots of fun colors, but that is what this paper pack kind of offers. And then there is other paper packs where you have pattern on both sides. So like this one, where you'll have different patterns on different sides of the paper. And these two paper packs are 6x6. The 6x6 work really well for card makers and is kind of my go-to. We'll learn later on when we go into different sizes that it works super, super well when you're doing the, you know, a 6x6 card. You'll have a little bit of scraps left over, but that could easily be used for inside. And I'm now getting onto a different tangent, so I apologize for that. So the 6x6 paper packs, you get a lot of paper in these. Again, once you start cutting it up for the fronts of your cards, you'll also see that this goes a long way. The nice thing with the double-sided is you have options. So this has 24 sheets in it. There's 2 of each kind, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But, you know, you also have like so many more options. If you have 12 sheets of paper, you have them double-sided. So it's like having 24 different patterns. So just something to keep in mind. So we've got these ones with another line. So this one is Simple Stories, and I forgot to take the tab off of this one as well. My apologies. So this one is 6 by 8. Bear with me just one second as I try to get rid of that. So this one is 6 by 8, and you know, you can definitely use it for card making. You do have some of what we call cut aparts or journaling cards, which are pretty handy to have, because if you just cut that out very simply, then that would fit nicely on the card front with a little bit of layering to kind of take it to the next level. So there's this one, again, double-sided. It will have some pages that are what I would call like full pages. So these can always be set aside, or you could always use the back for that one as well. And it sometimes has, give me one second, I'm not sure if this one has it or not. So we saw the one cut aparts. See, there's some more cut aparts to be used. Some beautiful paper that can be easily used for backgrounds, that kind of thing. So again, so that is a 6 by 8 paper pack. And then we also have a 8 by 8. And so just different sizes, again, it goes a long way. We'll have some areas where we can actually cut apart the little squares, rectangles, that kind of thing. But some beautiful paper in this paper pack as well. This works absolutely lovely for doing kind of an outside, for doing the front of your card, where you can just cut these and kind of layer that up. It will also have some cut aparts. I just don't remember where. So something like that, where you've got a bunch of different sentiments. You've got merry and bright, joy, let it snow. So a lot of different things that you can do with the paper packs. And then of course we also have the 12 by 12, which come, I'm gonna grab this one because it's right handy. So there's this one. So again, it's a 12 by 12 sheet of paper. Easily cut apart. You'll also have some stickers that come with the kit. So also double-sided, have a ton of different patterns, which you can see all across the top here. So depending on what it is that you're making, you know, that's what I said, like there is paper for everything, for every season, for every occasion. So it just depends on, you know, what it is that you're looking for. So we are going to, I am going to grab, let's see, what are we going to use? Okay, so we've got our 4 card bases. There's the 2 that are done at the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, which we can use 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. So that works. And I'm just going to show you, I've got a paper pack here that I've kind of cut into already. It is a 6 by 6. So it's our 6 by 6 warm and cozy. And it has, again, a lot of beautiful double-sided paper, but this cut apart sheet ends up being like super, super easy to use, and just a really, really fun way to add some texture, some difference in paper. So we've got these ones as well that are square. So if we just pick out some of, may not necessarily coordinate with the black, but we'll see. Let's see. So we've got this paper. So many lovely papers in this collection. It's crazy. Okay, so I'm going to use this one for my card front. And how you go about layering. So my preference is that I really like leaving a border and letting that base color come through. So that is the other thing. You want to make sure that when you're thinking of a card, that you think of all the layers kind of working together. And so you could easily pull these sheets out, see how they work with one another. Maybe you wanted brown or green to kind of be that base color. I cut them in black, so it is what it is. But, you know, equally as pretty. So what I'm going to do then is to cut this paper. So this is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm going to cut this paper 1/4 of an inch smaller in order to leave that border. So for me, this paper is now going to be cut at 4 by 5 1/4. The other thing you're going to want to be mindful of is with this pattern paper, there is definitely a direction, right? So if I hold my card like this, this is how I want to layer my pattern paper. So if you put this card over, this is 4 1/4. I'm going to cut 4 across. So I'm lining it up with the 4-inch. I've got my cutting blade. So I've got the 4 going across. So now if you see, just by looking at the side pieces, we have an 1/8 of an inch border on either side. So the next thing to do would be to cut it, well, it would be the height, but I just turned it around so that you could see that this is 5 1/2. So we're going to do 5 1/4. So now we have our front panel that will leave us a nice little border around the outside, letting that base color, which is always going to be a coordinating color. So here's what we do, is I'm going to set my paper trimmer aside. I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue adhesive to the back. There are other kinds of glue, like just, you know, again, if you go to your local craft store, there are plenty of glues that dry clear. That would be kind of where I would start. So when you're adhering this to the front, you're just going to kind of eyeball it, right? You'll get used to this too, but you're using liquid glue. So it's not like once it's down for good. You'll be able to kind of pick it up. Yes, it'll leave some glue on there, but you just reapply your glue. If you've made a mistake, I'm reapplying, and then I'm going to go back in. Okay. It helps to kind of give yourself a little bit of a bird's eye view. Of course, I'm not doing that because otherwise my head would be in your way and you wouldn't be seeing any of this. So that is basically what your card would look like. Okay, then easily can go through and grab one of these cut aparts. I'm just going to use my scissors for this. You can easily use your paper trimmer, just that I find it sometimes a little bit of a challenge, and especially when you're beginning. It's going to be, you're going to have to wait to get used to kind of where it actually cuts. There is, on this paper trimmer, there is a wire that runs in the middle, and that is your guide. That's where your paper is going to be cut. Sometimes I'm not so accurate with it, even after all these years. So I'm just going to finish cutting my little cut apart here, and we're going to pop it up on some foam. I'm going to pop it up on some foam. We could also, if you want this to stand out, if this kind of blends into the background a little bit more, the next thing that you can do is you can layer this. But I'm not going to get into that right now because I feel like that's kind of going. We'll do one like this. I'm going to get, where did I put my foam? My foam dots. Okay, so I'm going to show you the foam dots in action. Okay, so these are there. Okay, so I'm going to grab a couple of these foam dots. I know there was one that I had pulled out, but I stuck it back in. So I'm going to put down, as I lay them down, I'm also peeling off the adhesive. So I'm taking it off the sheet. This part is sticky. And then I'm going back and just kind of hanging on to the top part. Okay. I'm going to put one in the middle. On something that's small like this piece, I generally do each corner, definitely, one in the middle, and then you're good to go, right? Because this isn't really going to be something that gets like a lot of abuse, should I say. So now where to position it, it's completely up to you where to put it. I'm kind of usually of the opinion, like I usually like putting things in the corners, or, you know, you could put it in the middle, but then it hides a lot of the pattern that's going on here. So I'm just going to stick this in the corner. And again, eyeballing kind of where I want that piece. And I mean, it's pretty simple. Now, because I've chosen black, if this was white, you don't have to do anything to the inside. But if you're choosing a color, especially a darker color, you're going to have to think about the inside of the card and what to do. So I would take some white cardstock. Again, I'm just kind of going into my scraps. So I'm going to want to cut this the exact same size as the front piece that we did there. So the front piece here was 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm going to grab my paper trimmer. Because this is a solid piece of cardstock, I don't necessarily have to, you know, be super, super careful, because there's no pattern, there's no direction that won't work. But you do have to be mindful. This one is 4 1/2. So obviously I'm going to do the 4 1/4, but to make sure I have the least amount of waste as possible, I'm going to cut this at 5 1/4 this way. And this way it leaves me with a good size panel, and then trim that piece off to 4 1/4. Make sure that that is straight. Oops, there we go. Okay, then I have a little tiny strip. Sometimes scraps and waste is unavoidable. Okay, so what I'm going to do then for the inside is, again, I'm going to apply some liquid glue, and I did not cut that properly. I should have cut it at 4, and I did it at 4 1/4. And this is what happens. This is why we dry fit. Because even experienced people make mistakes sometimes. And that was key right there to show you. But that is also, like I said, why we dry fit. So I came in, put the paper down, and realized without having any glue on it that it wasn't the right size. So for this, if you wanted to stamp, my recommendation is that you stamp on it now. And this way, if you happen to make a bit of an error or a mistake, then you can always flip it over and stamp it again on this side. Or, you know, your whole card isn't kind of done for. But even then, if you happen to make a little bit of a boo-boo, you could always, there's always a fix. Always, always, always. And for the times that I have incorrectly stamped on the inside of a card, which there have been many, all I've done before is I'll cut another piece, I'll stamp it off the card, and then I'll apply it right to the middle. and, you know, or right to the inside, overlapping, covering what you already have. So there's plenty of ways to fix any issues, oopsies that you might have made. So there is one of our cards already done, beautifully adorned. If you wanted to, so we have some scraps off to the side. Now this one has a circle in it because it's, you know, it's longer than 6 by 6 and it's meant to have something trimmed off. So you could always take a bit of this, okay, in the event that we're not wanting to waste, which we don't. So I'm going to line that up just to where the circle is out of the cutting. So I see where my wire is going and I see that it's not going to hit the circle. The paper stays in place because I'm also pushing on this part. Okay. So just like that, I now have another piece that I could use somewhere on this card. And I personally like using this as a little, you know, a little band across the top or the bottom or even the middle. So I think I'm going to put this strip at the bottom. And the nice thing about these double-sided paper packs, whether it's the 6 by 6, 8 by 8, 6 by 8, or 12 by 12, is all of the paper is designed to go with everything that's in it. So you'll not have to worry about, you know, that certain designs only go with each other. They coordinate beautifully. And so there you go. So this may be a little bit that you want to keep. We can always cut it off right here. The circle part really is of no use, so that goes in the recycling. And we have our first card. So it's really as simple as that. Okay, so now with the other card bases, you could do a very similar style. I'm going to show you my next trick is going to be a little bit of layering. So I'm going to go back into my paper here. And we are going to choose another paper. I want something that is lighter, light and airy. That one's pretty. Let's see. I'm just going to see if I've got something in my stash here that will work. Oh, that does. Problem is sometimes you fall in love with both sides of the paper and it's like it's really difficult to make a decision as to what card or what paper you want to use because it all looks so gorgeous. So I'm going to go with this one this time. It's less directional in the sense that I could apply it this way, I could apply it this way, but because the leaves and the boughs kind of go in all directions, it really doesn't matter which way I decide to apply it to the paper. So this, again, really kind of handy to have, and there's always those types of papers in the paper pack. So I'm going to start off again by cutting 4 by 5 1/4. So there's 4 by 5 1/4. All right, we're going to set our paper trimmer aside, and this one is going to go in landscape, in the landscape direction. Okay, love that paper where it lies right there. So I'm going to add some of my liquid glue. I know the back side of this paper is also gorgeous, but we can't think about saving all the paper. Some of it's going to shine and some of it's just going to end up face down. So that's just the way it goes. Okay. So now using the liquid glue, I can kind of, you know, move that around. And that's why I always have my finger, at least one of them is still pinching, it's got hold of the paper. So I can kind of move it around if I want to. You have to be pretty ginger with it. So don't like go and you know, tug at it really, really hard, because then you might rip the paper. So now I'm going to look for another cut apart that I want to use for this. And I love this Walking in a Winter Wonderland. I feel like that will fit this card perfectly. And unlike what we did with the first one, I'm actually going to go back in and we're going to put this, we're going to do another bit of layering for this piece. And that way you can, you'll see the difference between the first card that we did and the second. So this one, again, I can put this one in the middle, as much in the middle as I possibly can get it. Before I do that though, I am going to measure this really quickly. I'm going to take my ruler. I figure out that this is just shy, so it's 2 7/8 by, let's see, by 2. I feel like it should have been like 3, which is fine. We can kind of round this up a little bit. So let's say it's 3 by 2. So I'm going to cut a little piece of black cardstock. And I'm going to cut it. This time I'm cutting it a little bit larger because I'm going to want to have a little bit of a border around this cut apart. So what I'm going to do then is, that was 2 by 3. We're going to cut this at 3 1/4, and I just flung my blade off. Give me 1 second. So we're going to cut this paper at 3 1/4. Spin it around, and then at 2 1/4. And again, that's going to give us a nice 1/8 border all the way around. Set that aside. And then if we layer this on here, and then go to layer this on top, you see how it really gives it extra oomph, for lack of a better word. And where we did on our first card, that now I can't find, give me 1 second. It was right here. Oh, I put it over there. Okay, so here we did not layer our cut apart, but we are going to do that for the second one. And so you see the difference, that this just really kind of makes it stand out that much more. So I'm going to adhere the cut apart. I'm going to use my liquid glue to put it on my frame or my base. And again, we're going to want to just kind of have a look, see. That's not quite in the middle. It's handmade, so try not to stress that it's not precisely in the middle. If you went to measure every single thing, making cards would take forever and probably drive you a little bit crazy. So because this one is a little bit bigger, I'm going to grab my bigger foam dots. I'm going to go to each corner, lay those down. I'm going to go in the middle. So I'm using about 5. It's usually a pretty good, a good amount. Peeling back the adhesive backing, getting rid of those. And always make sure that you have the card in the right direction. So again, not so detrimental in this case, but you'd always want to make sure that you're applying this in the right mode. So we have, this is going to go right in the middle this time, or at least as much in the middle as I can possibly get by not standing over it. And that's what you get for the second option. So we have option number 1, which is without the second layer of matting, and the layer 2, or the option number 2, which is using the second layer of matting. And we would do the exact same thing for the inside. Is I'm going to cut a white piece of cardstock to go inside here, as some of my scraps go flying. Okay, and we're going to cut this again at 5 1/4. 5 1/4. by 4. Not going to make the same mistake twice. Keep saying that to myself, but sometimes it happens that way. So I'm going to layer this on the inside, again, leaving the border, and then I'm going to pick up one of my scraps, and I'll put a bit of the scraps that I had from cutting the front, and we can use that really quickly on the inside to kind of, you know, fancy up our inside. So this was one of the strips that I had cut, and we can apply that here. Again, we can kind of flip it over if we wanted to. I'm going to stick with the same theme, and I'm going to do that little bit on the inside, just sticking it to one side. And there we go. I want to have that line up with the corner. So this is basically right where the white cardstock ends. It doesn't overlap any. And that's it. So we've done 2 cards. We could still make 4 more, but I just wanted to show you some basic tricks and tips for putting together some beautiful cards. And again, it's so easy. Right now, for these 2 cards, all you would need is some 8.5 by 11 paper and a 6 by 6 card pack, and you are off to the races. Thanks again for joining me. I hope you learned something. If there is ever anything that you are unsure about or that you would like to see in any future videos, please put a comment below. You can also email us at fabulouspaperemporium@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to help you with whatever it is that you're looking to do. Thanks again for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Have a great day. Stay safe. Stay well. Bye.